Hey, read through the word. I am so glad to be with you. Today is August 3rd, and today's lesson is called The End is Near. I feel like every lesson right about now we should call The End is Near. We need a megaphone that says, the end is near, the end is near, the time is coming. Come on, Judah. That it is coming. It gets, and you're like, well, you say that every day, it's coming, and then it's years and years, but yeah, but you're one day closer to the end for Judah than you were the day before. Just like as we wait for the second coming of Christ. You know, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. We don't know when, but we're one day closer than we were. So, we're one day closer to the end of Judah here. I'm calling this the end is near because as far as Judah, God had told them there was one more thing that was going to happen. It's sort of like us now with the second coming. We have things we're looking for. This was one of the things what we're going to look at today. So we are in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, verses 22 through 25. And I know you're like, Lisa, your allergies. I've finally figured out it's something called summer asthma. And so it's sort of with me. I'm not like you can catch it, but I'm not contagious or anything. So I've done a couple of tests to make sure. So, but I apologize for the cough, and you'll hear me do that, and I'm so sorry. But 22nd through the 25th, it says, but Josiah refused to listen to Neco, to whom God had indeed spoken, and he would not turn back. Instead, he disguised himself and led his army into battle in the plain of Megiddo. But the army archers hit King Josiah with their arrows, and they wounded him. He cried out to his men, take me from the battle, for I am badly wounded. So they lifted Josiah out of his chariot, and they placed him in another chariot. Then they brought him back to Jerusalem, where he died. He was buried there in the royal cemetery, and all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for him. The prophet Jeremiah composed funeral songs for Josiah. And to this day, choirs still sing these sad songs about his death. These songs of sorrows have become a tradition and are recorded in the Book of Laments. That is not the Book of Lamentations that we have. That's something totally different. The Book of Laments is something we don't have. So, here we go. Josiah. King Josiah is the good king. He has made all the reforms, but the people had shown. So Josiah went through and did all the good things, reforms and everything, trying to fix it, trying to fix everything. But you know what? You can fix the external things, but you can't fix the internal heart of man. And that's what was going on with the people of Judah. The people had shown who they truly were under Kings Manasseh and Ammon. And God had told them judgment was coming. God had promised the end of Judah would not happen until after King Josiah's death. So, remember I said there's something we're looking for, because that's going to mean that the end is really near. So, we're in 2 Kings 22. 2 Kings 22, 16 through 20. If I can see, it says, moreover, Manasseh shed very much innocent blood until he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another, besides his sin in which he made Judah sin in doing evil in the sight of the Lord. Now, the rest of the acts of Manasseh and all that he did, and his sin which he had committed, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Manasseh slept with his fathers, and was buried in the garden of his own house, in the garden of Uzzah. And Ammon his son became king in his place. Ammon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Meshumeleth, the daughter of Haruz of Jotha, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as Manasseh, as his father had done. And it continues and talks about Manasseh and Ammon and how they had led the nation. But Josiah comes in and he does all of the reforms. And he had promised Judah, it's too little too late. Because you did a bunch of external reforms, but the people's hearts didn't change. And so what's going on right here is there is the battle with King Neco of Egypt. And just when we need the whiteboard and a bunch of different colored markers so we could label this all out. So, because I would want y'all to see this. So King Neco is coming up from Egypt on his way to fight the Babylonians at Carchemish. And that's where he's going. So we need a map. Okay, so look at your map and see where Jerusalem and Judah is compared to. So if you think about the face of a clock, that's how I always think of maps, as a face of a clock. And if Jerusalem or Judah, if Judah is the dead center of a clock, then over at about between 7 and 8 o'clock is Egypt. And the Babylonians are coming from like 3 o'clock or so. And so Josiah is going to march out at 12 o'clock. He's going to go straight up and catch him. And he marched out to meet him because he thought, if I can go out and defeat Neco, king of Egypt, then the Babylonians will be scared of me and they'll leave us alone. So, and he didn't want to aid Egypt by letting Egypt traipse through their land. Then the Babylonians will be like, oh, Josiah helped them. And so he's like, no. So he marched out. Pause. He didn't ask God if this is what he was supposed to do. He didn't ask God. Josiah is 39 years old here. He marches out and he actually disguised himself so people wouldn't know he was the king. So he goes out and it says he's in disguise. And as he's out there, he is mortally wounded. And it says he dies in Jerusalem with full honor. Which is one of the things when I read the 2 Kings, when we looked at Manasseh and Ammon, it is very notable for us to see when Scripture tells us they were that. It says Manasseh slept with his fathers. It didn't say and Manasseh was buried with his fathers. Which means Manasseh died, but it means he was not buried in the king's burial ground because of all the evil he had done. So you'll see that. But Josiah is given full honor, so much so that Jeremiah writes songs about him. So we see this, but what happened is because he is killed. And then so Neco now takes over Judah. So the Egyptians are in rule over the area of Judah. And so at this point, it's time for Judah to be punished. Now, Jeremiah leads the nation in a lament over losing the righteous ruler that they had. And Jeremiah has been prophesying for... we're not right up on 40 years. It's coming close. So he knew all this is coming. He knows all it's coming. He knows that this is the sign. And it is it's one of those things to look at to remind ourselves about these people in the Bible. Excuse me. They're real flesh and blood. They're not, I had a friend of mine that used to say this, they're not flat flannel board figures. Some of y'all remember a flannel board. I had a flannel board when I was in Sunday school, when I was little. You had this flat little, it was made out of flannel, and you had people backed with flannel so it would stick, and you could move them around. I always loved those things, which is probably why I see in pictures and all that thing now is because of the flannel board. Some people call them flannel graph. But we can look at people in the Bible and make them, and I know we talked about this one time, I think it was last year when we were talking about people in the Bible, and I'll tell you all the time and remind myself that people in the Bible are real humans. They're not the hero of the story, which is why it's so disappointing. We're like, yay, Josiah, you're doing so good. Why'd you dress up? Why'd you go do that? Why didn't you ask God? You're like, man, stop. Because, remember, they're not the heroes of the story. There's one hero to this story. His name's Jesus. And so everything in the Bible shows us our desperate need for Jesus. And that we can't do it all right. And Josiah doesn't. But that doesn't mean we make him the bad king, because you see that with Hezekiah. Hezekiah does a lot of good, and then he does bad. But when you're looking at his overall life, which is what the Chronicles try to give us a little bit more of the overall life, when you're looking at the kings of Judah, it tells us the good and bad and ugly. Just like it doesn't hide that, but God depends on us to read the word and see these things. We should go, oh, he marched, he's leading the nation, he's been tearing down idols, he's been leading them to worship the one true God, and he's going off to stand off between Egypt and Assyria and make sure that this doesn't go any further. And he doesn't ask God. He just goes and does it. Very rash decision. And it ended up being the thing that ends Josiah's life. Now, then there's the argument. So there's that. Then there's the argument about, well, this is the thing we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for Josiah to die. Because then now it's really going to fall apart. Josiah's been the one thing that holds it together. So, it's always going to be how God uses people in their poor decision-making skills, flat-out disobedience, but then takes it, remember, for our good in his glory. So we're going to see that continue with this nation because God's not done. He has a story to tell. If we're paying attention, we'll see the story. And I would tell us right here with Josiah, the big thing that Josiah does here is the same thing we do all the time. I'm the queen. I want to say it was in my younger life, queen of rash decisions. Instead of slowing down and making godly decisions, not rash ones. I fight that every day of my life still, of not being rash, of not being petty, of not being to want the godly side of Lisa to show up and not let the fleshy side win. Because the warning here from Josiah is he let the fleshy side get a hold of him. And out he goes. And it ends up, and it's just so hard when we're looking at scripture but God uses the very thing he does to bring apart the next part of his plan for them. But I don't want to be the one dressing up and marching out to war without asking God what he wants me to do. to not make rash decisions, to make godly ones that glorify Him. So, see you next time on Read Through the Word.